kick off the conversation with a level set, because a lot of people have heard about autonomous vehicles. They've heard about drone technology. People think it's science fiction. Some people think it's here today. So I'd like to start off, we'll go in the same order. What is really the outlook? What's where the real story of autonomous ground and air mobility over the next several years to where we see it being by the end of this decade? Gerardo, let's start with you to get your perspective.
No, thank you. I think that's a really valid question, and I think for a place like Texas, one of my favorite trivia questions is, who was the first company that developed AV technology? I think all of our farmers will very much appreciate that it was actually John Deere. Right, this technology has been under development for now many years, and at Aurora, we're a 4-year-old company. Our 3 founders are Chris Hermson, Sterling Anderson, and Drew Bagnell. They came from Waymo, Tesla, and Uber, respectively. And for us, what we've announced is that we're going to be deploying this technology on our roads by the end of 2023. So it really is around the corner. We're excited about the work that we're doing in Texas and the ability to partner with TxDOT and DPS and the Office of the Governor to really deploy this technology in a state that has a regulatory climate that allows us to be able to do that. For us, our first product is going to be in trucking. So that's what we've announced that we're going to be deploying in Texas, and that's the work that we're doing today.
Okay, great. Robert, what's your point of view from TuSimple's work?
Yeah, and it's actually very similar to Gerardo and how AVs will work. It will be truly transformative. How we move goods around this country today, it's a overstressed supply chain as we all try to, on demand, want things tomorrow, fresh produce, anything that the capacity that's crunching our supply chain. So I like to remind people today, there's a little over 100 trucks today, if you add up all the companies doing what we're doing today from a testing perspective. So it will be very iterative. But similar to around 2024, with our partners Navistar, who makes the international branded truck, that's when you'll start seeing this technology take hold and start to scale. It'll go from hundreds to thousands of trucks starting in that 2024 and moving out to the end of the decade. TuSimple, and along with some of our partners, reservation partners, we have a little under 7,000 reservations of these vehicles from carriers, and the Schneiders, the U.S. Expresses of the world, Penske. So they'll be operated by the logistics industry today, but as lots of different things in logistics, whether it's intermodal or LTL, autonomy will be an opportunity for them to serve their customers, and they'll sell through and they'll buy that international factory built truck, purposely built for level 4, powered by the TuSimple's virtual driver.
No, it's great. Now, Chad, there's differences in the ground versus the air with the infrastructure that's in place through the interstate system and traditional types of lane markings and signs and those types of things. But some of the same challenges are in the flight. Can you give us a little bit of a perspective of, one, what's the differences and what has to be in place for air mobility? And then where do you think we're going to be by the end of this decade?
Well, Ty, I think there's a couple of perspectives I think that are really important to remember when you consider how autonomous vehicles in the air are going to be adopted. And one centers on the vehicle technology side of it. And so are we able to effectively integrate all of the sensors and sensor technology, both onboard and offboard the vehicle, to safely execute a mission that's needed today? But there's an infrastructure piece that comes with that as well, as you appropriately point out, that air traffic management in this new paradigm is a pretty daunting challenge. Most of the work that we see happening today that I think is exciting and sort of the leading indicator of where autonomous vehicles in the air are going to be is all in the small UAS space. So all vehicles that are under 55 pounds, there's a lot of groundbreaking work that's happening there in some early proof of concept work to test out those technologies. Where Bell's trying to take it is thinking about how do we eventually begin to scale into middle mile logistics? How do we take and fly vehicles into the national airspace and integrate with general aviation and commercial aviation and rotary wing aviation in a way that is safe and effective? What we can't afford to do is in the rush to bring technology to market is to trip over ourselves and making sure that we're not doing so in a safe and effective way.
Right. So obviously there's a lot that's happening in the state when it comes to both ground and air mobility solutions and autonomy. Now, Gerardo, you mentioned DPS and some of the state agencies that have been critical in terms of some of the things you've done. What really sets Texas apart from the relationships and the climate and the environment that we need to build on or sustain as we continue to look to drive thought leadership in the autonomy space?
No, I think that's a great question, and I believe that all of us in the industry would probably agree that one of the things that is the most valuable to us is predictability, right? It's knowing that the investments that we're making in the state are going to be able to be there long term, that we're able to not only just test the technology, but also be able to deploy it. And so that's why partnerships with DPS and TxDOT are so important. But at the same time, right, having the support from leaders like Senator Nichols and Senator Hancock to be able to create this framework that actually works. I think the best testament of the work that Texas has been doing and the foundation that it has laid is the fact that so many of our companies are making these investments in the state and bringing our operations there, because not only do we have that confidence that we're going to be able to test our technology there with partners like the COG and the county and the cities, but also at the state level, that once we are able to pull the human driver, and once we're able and have the confidence to show that it is safer than a human driver, be able to remove the human driver from our trucks, that we can do that in the state, and that we have the support from all the different levels of government to be able to do that successfully. That predictability is something that is incredibly important and incredibly valuable to us, that I think puts Texas really in a leadership position.
Question for you as well is, obviously Navistar has a growing presence here in the Texas area, and TuSimple, I think, is also part of the Mobility Innovation Zone, if I'm not mistaken. And so how is your kind of participation in Texas and within our environment? What do you see working well, and how can we continue to do the things that are on the right track?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, what Alliance Texas has done for TuSimple is incredible. We actually have another facility down right next to DFW Airport as well. And then of course, you mentioned the new factory being built outside of San Antonio with our partner Navistar. It's the regulatory certainty. I'll say this as a proud Californian, as a former state employee. When you call California, it's like, how can I not help you? And versus like when you pick up the phone and call TxDOT and DPS, is like, hey, how can I help you? You got a problem? Let's figure it out. Let's bring all the parties together. It's not just a industry love fest. Let's bring in law enforcement. Let's bring in concerned communities. Let's get together and let's figure out how to solve this problem for the betterment of everyone. Because TxDOT and the leadership in Texas understand that future-proofing your supply chain is key, not just for Texas, but the whole nation, right? And having Texas pretty much be Mecca for what, Gerardo and I are trying to do. We're one of, I think, 5 or 6 companies now testing in Texas. And it really will be the first kind of serious deployments of this technology will be in the great state of Texas. So it's the certainty, it's the also the attitude towards innovation, I'd say, is a huge factor. And then not to mention, just the amount of freight, I don't need to tell anyone in your audience, that moves through Texas. It's been on I-35 and sees the number of trucks, so it's a trifecta that really makes Texas the place to be for what we try to do.
Gerardo, Robert, Chad, thank you for a wonderful panel. I think for all the YTexas members, we have a set of companies here that are very pragmatic and realistic about deploying real-world solutions that drive autonomy in the air or on the ground. And for those that are willing to push the boundaries of what's possible, I encourage you to reach out to these organizations to identify your use cases. And most importantly, as we're in budget season for many companies, give yourself an innovation wedge, that you have money to do testing and experimentation so that you too can learn these real world lessons and apply them to your organization. It's only through experiential learning that you can identify both the risks and, more importantly, the opportunities moving forward. But we have a great climate here in Texas. We have leading edge companies that are here working in Texas. Let's continue to work together safely and push the boundaries of what's possible and lead our state in the future of autonomy. Thank you.